Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm the Last Wanderer, and I'm here to show you today the coolest new piston door that you can make in 1.20 using the new blocks and mechanics from this update. Here, I have a piston door, and when I walk up to it, nothing happens. That's because this door here is a relic of the past. It requires a button to open. Something that's now kind of just an inconvenience. Because over here, I have this same piston door, except it's got a different method of activation. It opens automatically for me. No more time wasted pushing buttons. If you're worried about mobs opening up the automatic piston door and getting into your base, well, don't be, because they can't. Neither these creepers nor any other mob will be able to open up these doors. It opens only for players. I can just hop in here real quick and demonstrate my point. The creepers can't open the door, but once the calibrated skulk sensor detects me, it'll open up just fine. Another great thing about this door is that the activation range is completely customizable thanks to the large range of the calibrated skulk sensor. Here, this yellow glass indicates where the door will open. If I walk past that point, the door opens just fine. Over here, I've used wool occlusion to narrow that range. Now, instead of being all the way back here, it's here in the front. And the door opens just like that. Before I break down how the door works, let me first answer some potential questions. First, let me answer questions about the door's size. I chose to do a 3x3 because of convenience, compactness, and because I want to. The 3x3 is one of the most widely used piston doors, and it opens at a good speed relative to its size. Yes, of course, there are larger piston doors, and you might find those cooler, but the size is not why I consider this one the coolest piston door. Instead, it's the activation mechanism. And if you choose to slap that on a 5x5 or other piston door, it's still the certified coolest piston door in my books. Second, if this door should replace regular entrances, should it replace secret entrances too? No. This door is designed to be as practical and easy to access as possible. If you want a secret entrance or a door behind a combination lock, you may still want to consider buttons for those. Lastly, could you make this door before 1.20? Kind of. Since a skulk sensor and shrieker were only added back in 1.19, that's the furthest back we could make this door. Even then, it would be heavily modified. It would also scream at you. And it would be prematurely activated by any player interaction. The door is best built in 1.20 though, because throughout the 1.20 snapshots, the skulk blocks underwent many changes. In an old snapshot, I built this prototype. The footage is grainy because it is old, not because I recorded it wrong or anything. Anyway, when the door opens, you might be able to tell it's working differently. And it still screams at you. And that brings us to the final design, which notably does not scream when you open it. Now, let me get into the mechanics behind how this door works, starting with the calibrated skulk sensor. The calibrated skulk sensor here is used to narrow which vibrations will activate the door. We don't want something like a barrel opening, interactions with a chest, or dropping items to open the door. Instead, what we use is a comparator with a fill level 1 composter or cauldron. Now, this calibrated skulk sensor will only detect players walking. You can open chests, barrels, throw items safely. Only the player walking will open the door. Now we come to the heart and soul of the door, the skulk shrieker. And I'm not just talking about the little spinning souls inside. This block plays a lot of important functions. For one thing, the skulk shrieker makes for a great timer, because an observer can detect when it starts and stops shrieking. This shrieking lasts for 90 game ticks or 4.5 seconds, which might not seem like a lot of time, but it's plenty for the door to remain open. This, coincidentally, lasts as long as a 3 comparator clock. Here's a side-by-side of the two, lasting the same amount of time. Another thing is that the Skulk Shrieker is what allows the door to be mob-proof. See, this creeper here is jumping up and down on a Skulk sensor. Yet, no matter how many times it jumps, it'll never activate the Shrieker. However, if I step on this Skulk sensor just once, the Shrieker will immediately go off. This is because only a player can activate a Skulk Shrieker. This is a very important function for an automatic door to have because of what could happen if your door wasn't mob-proof. Imagine you're traveling back to your base to craft 3 stacks of jukeboxes, like people do. You get to the crafting table, you start crafting your planks, and everything's going well, until... uh-oh. And all that can be avoided if you just use a Skulk Shrieker. And here's another really cool thing about the Skulk Shrieker. Now, some of you might not like the Skulk Shrieker shrieks. I can't imagine why. But now, as of 1.20, you can silence them with water. No longer will you have to listen to those damn Skulk Shriekers. Besides that one. And one last thing, you never have to worry about these things summoning the Warden. Only naturally generating Skulk Shriekers can summon it. Skulk Shriekers that you've placed never will. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, you could mine down into the deep dark, find a naturally generating Skulk Shrieker, create the door around the Skulk Shrieker, and then you'd have an automatic door that could summon the Warden when you used it. I don't know why you would want that. The door would behave differently though, because you see, naturally generating Skulk Shriekers can't activate when there's a nearby Warden, meaning the player would be trapped in the room with the Warden. Now that I think about that, that could make for an interesting trap. Though that's not for this video. Let's get back to the door. Alright, it looks like I added a lot here, but don't worry, it's not that bad, I promise. So this line of redstone here pretty much just powers the sticky piston to retract the composter. It's laid out this way to add in the pistons for later. This dropper here also has a second purpose of updating this comparator when this sticky piston pulls up the composter. Because otherwise, if this dropper isn't powered, the comparator is butted. If I activate the door the intended way, you can see this comparator turns off. Why though? Why do I want the calibrated Skulk sensor to be able to detect any vibration? Well, it has to do with this circuit here. See, the calibrated Skulk sensor has a cooldown of 10 game ticks or 5 redstone ticks once it depowers. And if we count this up, we've got 1 redstone tick for the torch, 2 for the repeater, and 2 for the dispenser, which makes 5 redstone ticks in total, or 10 game ticks. Basically, this circuit here clogs the calibrated Skulk sensor's input. It'll always just detect this dispenser, placing and breaking the powder snow. This is important to prevent the door from breaking, because the Skulk Shrieker here has a much slower cooldown than the calibrated Skulk sensor, and if it activated too soon, that could break the door. So, this circuit prevents the door from breaking. All you have to do is make sure no player is within 2 blocks of the calibrated Skulk sensor, since it will prioritize the closest vibration. And that's pretty easy, because the door already disallows that. If you paid attention to my previous designs, you might have noticed one used a note block. So, why didn't my final design use one to make the door sound better? The simple answer is because I couldn't. I'm activating this here, the note block went off, but unfortunately, the calibrated Skulk sensor didn't detect it. And the delay is correct. We've got 1 redstone tick here, 4 there, that makes 5. It really should have detected it. The problem is the update order. The calibrated Skulk sensor simply allowed new vibrations too late in the update order to be able to detect the note block. If I finagle the redstone a bit, I can get it to work, but unfortunately that has the side effect of making the door less compact. Another issue is just now I can't place this wool here, so something in this general direction could falsely trigger the calibrated skulk sensor. And if we look at my final design here, you can see that the only room for the note block to be able to play will be up here, and this observer will get in the way, so it wouldn't make any vibrations. Just unfortunate all around. The dispenser just fits better. What if you don't have this circuit though? What'll happen to the door? Well, let's go back to imagining a similar scenario to one I mentioned before, where you're going back to your base and you want to craft 3 stacks of jukeboxes. But you forgot your diamond, so you go out and now your door is broken. That's why this circuit here is very important. We've just got a few last things to cover with this door. First up is this double piston extender I added in. It's pretty cool and not the usual one you'd see in a door. I can activate it here and it'll open like that, and then it closes back up. The reason that I use this double piston extender instead of this one, despite it being more compact and standard, is simply because this one is a little bit faster, both opening and closing. Now, it's only a little bit faster, but every bit helps when the door's automatically opening. And even though it's less compact, I did have just enough room to squeeze it into the door. Now we're down to the final pieces. This is part of the outer shell that opens, all from this circuit here. It just goes around like that. Yup, and it just opens and closes like this. Trust me, it's nothing special, I don't need to go into detail. And finally, we have the circuit here for this last sticky piston to retract and then push back this block. The reason there's 3 observers is just to give it enough delay so that it triggers with the rest of these sticky pistons around the double piston extender. Now, the door opens like a proper 3x3 does. And finally, we can start with the tutorial, which I'll be doing in survival, so you get a better feel of how to make the door for yourself. Here are the materials you'll need. Let me just clarify a few things. This is a dropper, this is a dispenser. Remember, there's a difference between those two. Very important. These seeds here can actually just be any compostable item, and this rotten flesh can be any item in the game. These 10 blocks are needed solid block supports for this door, and these 3 wool are the wool I include in the 1 wide version of the door, though I do have more wool for more occlusion later, but that's an optional step. These blocks here are just for the door. These 4 blocks are holding back the water in the skulk sensor and the shrieker, and then these 64 blocks are just extra blocks because obviously you need to make a floor and stuff. And with that said, let's get to the tutorial. Alright, so let's start building the door. This red concrete here is where the center of the door is going to be. So what you want to do is dig down 6 blocks, then place your first wool block down 6 blocks in the exact center of where you want the door to be. Now the calibrated skulk sensor would go here, but I don't recommend placing it yet. Instead, just place a temporary block and put 2 wool blocks to the side. You don't want to place it because when you're building the door, it's just going to keep getting triggered by the calibrated skulk sensor, and that's just going to be annoying. The first circuit that we're going to add on is the vibration clogger, which I showed before. So to make that, place a redstone torch here, block here, repeater on 2 ticks, another block here, dust up here, and then a dispenser with the powder snow bucket inside. Then just quickly flick this redstone dust, because for some reason this dispenser might trigger when you're building it, and just flicking it twice will stop that from happening. On the other side, we'll place in part of the vibration changing circuit, so a block will go here, comparator on top facing away from the wool, another block, then the composter, Then you can place in your compostable item. The first item you place into a composter always has a 100% chance of composting, so you only need one. Now it's time to add in the shrieker, put it next to the dispenser, place 2 observers coming off from it, put glass on both sides so that you can waterlog it, and then place 1 more observer on top. Next up, we can add in the double piston extender. Start with the dropper facing up, a hopper on top, and throw in your random item. Put a composter on top of that, comparator here, your 2 sticky pistons there, an observer here, and then finally place a note block. Let's finish up the double piston extender with a note block here, an observer facing up, a block, redstone dust, and then another sticky piston. Next, we can finish up the vibration changer with a note block here, another one on top, and then just come down and place a downwards facing sticky piston. We can now add in the rest of the pistons for the door, so we'll start on the right side with 2 observers coming off the note block, and then 1 facing up, then 2 sticky pistons on top of that, a note block on top of that sticky piston, a block, and then a redstone dust. On the other side, we can add an observer on top of this note block, another block, and some dust, then come down, add in 2 sticky pistons, go back up, add a block with dust, go back down, and off the edge of that dust, add another block, go back up, and add some more dust, then go back down again, add a sticky piston on the very edge of that dust, 2 more sticky pistons, then go back up 1 last time, place in 3 more dust, and then your last block and last dust. With most of the main circuitry done, you can finally add in your door. So start above the note block, place blocks like this. I'll also be adding these temporary blocks so I can add in the frog light and place it in the correct direction. Obviously you don't need to. And then to finish out the door, just place these blocks like this, then there, and there. Now, at this stage, if you want, you can also add in a floor on both sides. Now, it's time to add in the calibrated skulk sensor and test out this door. So, just come down here, and make sure you're facing this way when you place in the calibrated skulk sensor. That way, the amethyst input side should be facing that way. Now you can add in glass on this side, go around. I'm just sneaking not to prematurely activate the door. Then, quickly place in water and switch to glass, or whatever other block you have. And now I can come out here and see how the door works. Yup, everything's working just fine. So this next step is optional and just about wool occlusion. I'll show you my preferred way of doing it, but obviously it would be too tedious to show a tutorial for every possible way. So after this, I'll just show you a showcase of some other designs. Now, my preferred way is a staircase design like this. 3 more wool here, 1 there, and then close it off on both ends. And then we just do the same on the other side. 3 like that, 3 there, 3 more there, and then close it off. And this gives you the range that I showed off at the beginning of the video. And here's a showcase of the various ranges arranged in how complex the wool structures are. First, we've got none, which gives you a range of 15 blocks. Over here, we have just this 1 wool block next to the calibrated skulk sensor, and that gives you just 5 blocks. Then, here's the design that I showed you how to make earlier. It gives an 8 block range. Now, here's an extended design, which is just 1 slice bigger here, and that gives you a range of 11 blocks. Next up is another extension of the staircase, this time vertically, and that gives you a range of 7 blocks. And then lastly, we have another version, which is an extension of this design here, and that gives a range of 9 blocks. Now, here are a couple of final notes. If you want to be able to run through this door, the wool design that I showed allows you to run through the edge uninterrupted, and then this design here, the extended version, allows you to run through the center, though you will step up on the center block, but I don't think that's too much of an issue. Also, if you plan on building a floor above the door, make sure you have wool occlusion, because calibrated skulk sensors have a very long range of 16 blocks. And don't feel the need to be constrained to any of these ranges. You can of course make your own. You might just need a little bit more wool and some testing though. But if you do want to use any of these designs, they'll be in the world download. With all that said, that's all I've got for now, so thank you all so much for watching, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them below. I hope you all found this video and door design useful, and I also hope to see you all again soon. But for now, goodbye!